Hi there, Agile friends. I'll come in here just with a quick note to let you know that the Agile Online Summit 2022 is coming soon. To know more, check out bit.ly/AOS2022. That's all one word, all lowercase, bit.ly/AOS2022. Now, stick around to the end of the episode if you want to know more, but for now, on to the show. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Team Tuesday this week with Franziska Moenster, aka Franny. Hey, Franny, welcome back.
Hello.
So, Franny, on Tuesdays we talk about teams, and we will dive into the team topics in a second. But before we do, share with us, what's the book that most influenced you in your career as a Scrum Master?
So the book which has most influenced me, I think, is one which has been mentioned often by your petitioners, and it's The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. I hope I pronounced his name right. And it really showed me, I read it, I think, in my first year as a Scrum Master, and it really showed me that conflict is a good and important thing. That was my main takeaway until this day from this book. There's more takeaways in it. If you haven't read it, I would really recommend reading it. And it showed me that from different cultural backgrounds, but also just family upbringings, we have a really different approach to conflicts. So some people like me might be brought up where we don't talk about conflicts. We just wait until they pass, and maybe we just hide in our room for a day and then, okay, let's get back out. And if you have a lot of people like that on a team, then you will just build up this unspoken conflict, and eventually it will explode. And then no one will be able to solve it on a function level anymore because you've already gathered so much emotion. Meanwhile, there might be other people who, from a cultural background or from their upbringing, are really forward in talking things and saying, I have a different opinion. And that's nothing personal, nothing insulting. It's just they have a different opinion. And in order to build great products, we need this diversity. We always talk about diversity in teams, but we really need this diversity in opinions as well in order to have great products, to foster innovation, to get great ideas. We need to have this culture of conflict. And in that sense, conflict is nothing bad. It's just different opinions, and we put them together to, at the end, hopefully have amazing ideas and great products.
Absolutely. And the fact that the conflict, even though it generates emotions, is there because it generates also the need to resolve it, right? And what the book talks about, which I think is very important to mention, is that we should turn that into a constructive conflict. Like, for example, things like, okay, I hear that your opinion is this and your opinion is that. Is there a third opinion or a fourth opinion? Is there something better we could think about, right? Like generating this idea in the team that it's okay to share different perspectives.
Yeah, that's a really good addition. And then it's never something personal, or like most times it shouldn't be personal. If you say something and I disagree, that's not because I don't like you. It's just because I have another idea on addition. So really good pointing that out. Yeah. And then I wanted to add something for the German listeners, a book I really, really loved. I only read it recently, and it's maybe a bit wider than just the Scrum Master journey. But it's New Work Needs Inner Work. So it's a really great book by Bettina Rollo and Johanna Breidenbach. And they talk about how, if we, in an organizational view, so it's really a big, not the team perspective and not the Scrum and Agile perspective, but in a wider view, in the terms of new work, how they define it and what you need for a way of working where we just mentioned emotions, how we make it more normal in our day-to-day work to talk about emotions, what kind of inner structure we need if we want to have less structure in the outside world. And that's a really great book. So far, unfortunately, only available in German, but maybe one day it will be also available in English, because for me, it's been really helpful and really great inspiration.
Yeah, that actually, what you said is actually a very good, I think, sales pitch for the book, right? Like, what is the inner structure we need when we want to have less structure outside ourselves? And that's really what we need in an agile organization, right?
Yeah.
Like, we need to be able to, and we talked a lot about that in the 2022 Scrum Master Summit. We had quite a few interviews about this idea that we need to live with uncertainty, not to cope with it, but actually to take advantage of it, right? To transform it into something that becomes positive for the organization. And the fact that we need a different inner structure is quite obvious, especially in Germany, I think.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, we love structure. So
Yeah,
it's a very good
I
point.
lived and worked 3 years in Germany, so I know that the cultural perspective on structure and Ordnung, as the word goes, is quite different from other countries like Spain, where Franny
Yeah.
works today.
Yeah, I was gonna say I have quite some culture shocks in that direction at the moment as well when there's no structure, and I actually need to admit that sometimes it's better like to not structure no plan everything. So actually, having some personal takeaways from that as well. Yeah.
Which further highlights the importance of that book that you just
Yeah.
recommended. So we'll
Yeah.
put the link on the show notes so that at least the German speaking and or German reading of you out there can go and read them and read the book. All right, Franny, now we turn our attention into the team and how sometimes they become their own worst enemies. We're looking for patterns, like small behaviors, things they do that hint that a bigger problem is up ahead. So tell us that story, a story of a team that started small with a small set of patterns, maybe small behaviors that ultimately grew and became a big problem.
Yeah, so I picked the story. I was only with that team for 3 months, so I actually don't know like the long-term story of how it started. I just saw the outcome of it, and it was in a remote setting, which I think all of the listeners can now, after the COVID times, relate to. So you dial into a remote meeting, and no one has turned on their camera except for me, the funny new Scrum Master, who's like, I don't know, think of them thinking of me as like the funny clown, I don't know, to like jumping up and down in front of the camera. And so I invited everyone, like I didn't want to force anyone. I just invited everyone to turn on their camera and nothing happened. And I was like, okay, I'm new here. I will not force it. I leave my camera on so they see my face and what's happening for me. And then afterwards talked like one on one and asked them what's holding them back. And for them, it was a really big journey of having lost that personal contact. So they didn't really feel comfortable with their colleagues anymore. So, as I said, I joined them during COVID time. So I'm not too sure how it was before that. Like if they were all co located in one office and having a coffee every now and then together and lunch, or if it has always been like this. But so from the symptom of no one turning on the camera, I then discovered a few more things. So when I tried some check-ins with small talk, it was always silence. So I tried to formalize them even more and like having to write post-its on, I don't know, questions like, what are you eating for lunch today? Like just trying to get some kind of conversation started. And for me, it was really, really hard. And in terms of teams and their journey, I think we need this personal level of conversations, of small talk, to get trust. So we just talked about conflict and the importance of conflicts. And for me, it only works if we have trust on a personal level. So I can only accept your different opinion if you trust me. And for me, for trust, I also need to have some personal kind of relationship with you. And so I think the overall takeaway from that team, and I've also seen it in other teams, is not valuing the small talk and the interpersonal level enough. So that's my biggest takeaway from that. It starts, I don't, with that team, I'm not 100% sure how it started, but the thing I saw when I joined the team was no camera, no whatsoever enjoyment in any kind of small talk. While when I was doing one-on-ones with them, they were all quite talkative. So it was not this typical, I don't know,
Mm.
prejudice of developers who just don't like to talk and are super introverts. When I did one-on-ones with them, they were actually quite
How
talkative.
did the retros go in that team?
Yeah, super silent, super silent. Like the product owner put out 3 opinions. I put out an observation, and maybe one developer added like something, but it was super silent. So yeah.
Wow. And how did the team work overall? Like, were they able to collaborate?
So they collaborated a lot via chats. so chats and emails. So that worked in the end. I cannot really. I was only with them, as I said, for 3 months, but uh, overall, their communication channel was just written. So chats and emails, and there was a lot of them. And for me, I'm a talkative person. I like talking. I just pick up the phone and call someone. But they just preferred the written way. And I'm, until this day, not 100% sure if the reason for that was some underlying conflict which we never solved, which could be one thing, or if just it's a different approach to work. Like at work, we don't talk about personal things. Could also be like maybe it's just the culture they had. So
If you could go back in time, what would you try differently?
I think I would not overwhelm them so much from day one. So I really love my job. I'm really full of joy. And so on my first day, I'm there, I'm opening my camera, I'm greeting everyone really joyfully. So probably I would throttle down a little bit on that. And I did that. So in my next assignment, it was in the consultancy time that I did. In my next assignment, I was a bit quieter from the start, first starting with listening and observing a little bit. What is the kind of coach that team needs? Do they need the clown to to entertain them, or do they need rather someone who listens and maybe asks like 2 questions? So that's the takeaway I had from it. If you're new to a team, and the team is also, it's always for me, it's 2 different scenarios. Either you have a complete new team set up, so that's what I had as my first Scrum Master. Everyone was new, the complete team was new. We had new team members joining for the first half year. So then you have always movement in the team. But if you as a Scrum Master, as an outsider, join a team which has already been working for a year, 2 or 3 years together, then my takeaway is to just really sit down and observe a lot more. So I think that's where I personally grew a lot also.
And one of the things that I always think about, and I'm Portuguese, so I have a problem with that, is this concept of space, taking the space, right? Like if you go into a retrospective, for example, and you talk a lot, and I tend to do that, as people know that have listened to this podcast, then you take the space away from the team, and they don't need to, step forward, right? Like bring in the content, bring in the discussion, while when you take a step back, when you're, as you said, observing and listening, then you allow the space for the team to actually say what's going on. And one of the things, definitely a tip for our Scrum Master friends out there, is that we need to learn to sit with silence, right? Like just going to the meeting, like a daily stand-up, for example, going to the meeting and nobody says anything and you don't say anything. And if it lasts 15 minutes, then it lasts 15 minutes. Because somebody will for sure step forward and say, okay, we need to talk about something.
Yeah, so that was one of my biggest lessons also, probably something I can still work on also. But yeah, absolutely, sitting with silence. If you don't want to start with the 15 minutes silence, maybe start with 10 seconds. So I did that. That was my step. I was like, okay, before you say something, you count to 10. And that was already enough. Like often 10 seconds waiting is already enough for someone to be like, okay, then I will say something.
Yeah, give space to the team. Absolutely. And that's a very practical tip. Thank you for that, Franny.
You're welcome.
Hi there, Agile friends. Thank you for sticking around to know more about this year's Agile Online Summit. The summit will have 4 keynotes and 4 tracks you will not want to miss. The keynotes will touch on critical topics for us, from delivering on time to helping you to focus on sustainability. The 4 tracks are tools, so we'll focus on tools you need to excel at your job, but also your mission. We'll also have a track on sustainability, which is, of course, about people and their sustainable pace, but it's also about how do we bring sustainability to the products and the planet we inhabit. We'll have a 3rd track about happiness, talking about doing what we love and, most crucially, loving what we do. And finally, the 4th track will be live. It will be mostly hands-on sessions to help you roll up your sleeves together with the presenters. Oh, and we will also have a coaching clinic, as we usually do, organized to help you discuss and get inspired to solve the hardest challenges you face at work. This year, we'll have a special emphasis on interaction with your peers, so get your ticket and join the Slack at bit.ly/AOS 2022. As always, we have free tickets for anyone that wants to attend live and the VIP tickets for those of you who want to keep the videos forever. So check them out at bit.ly/AOS 2022. I'll see you on the conference floor. Tuesday is Team Day here on the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast. But tomorrow we talk about something that goes beyond the work we do with the teams. We will talk about how to lead change and what our guests have learned from leading and participating in change programs during their career. See you tomorrow. We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.